Hi everyone. So back with another video in terms of some plant care and tips for this huge beast, which is, for those in the know, my Philodendron Gloriosum. So let me just move it slightly out of the way so you might be able to see me a bit more as well. Let's just talk a bit more about the morphology about this plant. So unlike some other philodendrons that tend to be climbing up naturally in their habitat, essentially in their environment, they will be growing up trees because they tend to be epiphytes. So an epiphyte is something that will attach and live symbiotically. It won't take any nutrients away from the trees that it's growing up, but it needs that for support so it can reach those kind of higher light levels. This is not one of those philodendrons, not anywhere near. This is actually a scrambler, so you might be able to see, if I turn this around, you can see the stem actually grows along the top of the soil, and that's something to be aware of as well. If you're getting one of these plants, and usually it'll be a 1 or 2 leaf rooted cutting, and people, when they're used to philodendrons, they will shove that stem with the root into the soil, but actually that will really slow down the growth. This plant definitely wants to be growing up on the top of the soil, and it's the same as the Rhaphidophora tetrasperma. But again, people will always tend to bury that in, but it takes that much longer for it to start growing because it wants to be on the top of the soil level as well. And you can see I've got it in a wide vessel because it grows along the soil. And even with that being said, you can see a new leaf that's going to come in here as well. But I think I probably have got another maybe 1 or 2 leaves before I need to actually then repot this. Probably what I will do is not repot it necessarily, but I might chop and propagate it and put it back into the same pot just to get a fuller plant. The other thing as well about the way that it grows, because it doesn't grow up, the leaves will get a bit larger and they'll probably get a bit taller, but it won't ever be a very, very tall philodendron, where you can get some philodendrons that can go up to 2-3 meters tall. I have got this in a terracotta pot because it helps wick away some of that moisture, and I have definitely got a very, very light, airy soil mix in with this, because the other thing to be aware of as well, especially when you're putting in a new plant in a pot like this, because you want to give it its space to grow, is there's a lot of growing media, a lot of soil in there, which means that it will retain a lot more moisture and it will take longer for the water to kind of leave the growing media. So there is a very high chance of root rot. So be very, very cognizant of how you water this plant. It would be a case, at least what I was doing, is I would water around the root ball and not water the whole pot. I'd still let it drain all the way through. It's got a drainage hole at the bottom, and make sure that it's not sitting in water, because as with most philodendron, it will tend to go towards root rot quite quickly if it's sitting there with its roots suffocating in water. So be aware of that. The other thing as well with this plant that you might be able to notice is this was, and apologies, these grow in a very weird way to begin with until they kind of get established. This was the first leaf, this was the second leaf, and it got some burn because during the summer it was a bit too close to the window. But also the second leaf was considerably smaller than the first one as well. But after that, you can see every single leaf after that is quite large. What you might also be able to notice is this is a slightly older leaf. It was getting slightly less light, and then I moved it to a slightly higher light location, and you can see that there's a much stronger, more pronounced veination that is happening on the leaf surface, essentially. So it's much more bright white that's happening there. Right, let me just shift this again. In terms of watering with that plant, as I do with most of my plants, is I will put the plant in my app, and I can share that app in link in the description. And what I do then is I check in on that app, and I think on average every 5 or 6 days I will then use a moisture meter, check that if the soil needs to be watered, the plant needs to be watered even, and water it accordingly. In terms of fertilization or feeding the plant, I will do that every 2nd or 3rd feed, and it seems to be doing really well. It seems to be loving life. And yeah, that's a bit more about this plant. It's a slightly rarer philodendron to get a hold of. It's very similar, I find, to the variegated monstera, where it's not necessarily rare because they're difficult to grow or they're slow growers necessarily, even though the variegated monstera tends to be a slower grower. It's because a lot of people are after this plant as well. So I've been looking for, before I got hands on one, I was looking for almost over a year, and it wasn't because it wasn't necessarily coming up on the market, because they do, when they get established, they tend to grow a bit like weeds. Is the main reason is because there's a lot of people looking for them. So things would come on the market and within minutes they'd be gone. So if you do want to get one of these, be eagle-eyed, set up reminders when plant drops are going to be happening in some of your plant shops that you know will be carrying this, and try to be first in line to get one of these, because they will go quite fast. This might change as well, as we're seeing with some of the plants that were rare or harder to get a year ago. They're going into mass production sometimes recently, and they are coming out a lot more readily now into the market. So this might be one of those ones, because there's a lot of people that are after this, and it's not as slow of a grower as the variegated monstera. So potentially we might see this coming onto the market in larger volumes, but at the moment it's quite tricky to get a hold of, just because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of people that are looking for this plant. But yeah, that's a bit more on the Philodendron Gloriosum. If you've got this plant and you want to share some of your experience, drop it in the comments down below. If you've got any questions, drop it in the comments down below and let's have a conversation. As always, I will try to post every 2 to 3 days. If you like what you're seeing in these videos, please do give me a like and subscribe to see when I've got new videos coming on. As a new YouTube creator, it really helps quite considerably to get this content out to more people. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for watching. Bye.